Hey everybody, it's Matt Shares, the CEO of SBI. I'm here for another exciting installment of the Revenue Growth Help Desk, and I am honored to have what I consider to be one of the top 1%ers when it comes to go-to-market and commercial leaders that I've interacted with in the past 25 years. So Chris Perry has been kind enough to join me. So Chris, great to see you, man.
Hey Matt, that's so flattering. Thank you very much for those remarks, and coming from you, who I put in the top decile of advisors, right back at you.
Very nice. So Chris, everybody is, we're all working from homes and mobile offices. So I know I'm in Scottsdale. Where do we find you on this fine Tuesday?
Yeah, thank you. I'm in Naples, Florida, Southwest Florida. We kind of escaped from New York City, where I operate from, about 5.5 weeks ago. For obvious reasons, it's worked out well, but I will say the temperature's starting to move up here. Maybe it's time to get back north.
Yeah. Well, so Chris, I thought, one of the reasons that we asked you to join us today, and we're really grateful, is, as you know, we've been tracking feedback and questions that people have been asking. And one of the big ones people have been asking, as we're into early May, is things are starting to open up a little bit. How should I think about that? So knowing that you've been through multiple crises and you've come out on the other side in each of them, I thought you were an expert to talk a little bit about transformation, digital, and just how you're thinking about Broadridge, and maybe a way for us to get started, if you could introduce Broadridge and your role, and then we'll jump into our 3 segments.
Terrific. Matt, my name is Chris Perry, and I'm president of Broadridge Financial Solutions. We're about $12 billion market cap S&P 500 company, and we have about $4.6 billion in revenues. And we basically serve the financial services markets around the world with governance, communications, the technology that powers and enables transaction processing information around the industry. We have vertical markets we serve that are wealth management, asset management, corporate issuers, and capital markets trading. So that's Broadridge in a nutshell. And we very likely send something to every household in America, not everyone, but almost everyone, whether that be a shareholder proxy vote, or whether that be a bank brokerage statement, either digitally or in physical print. And, American Express bills are another example. So we're in your household.
Well, and Chris, I think, one of the reasons why I asked you specifically to join us is the breadth of your purview relative to what you cover from a role perspective, between sales, marketing, client solutions, your eye into product, M&A. Like, you truly have purview across the entire organization, broader than, a traditional chief revenue officer. So that's one. I think the second thing is, you've led large organizations on the other side of events like 9/11, on events like the financial crisis of 2008, and now here. So I guess my first question that came bottoms up from people submitting feedback, we're starting to see commerce quietly, slowly, in fits and starts opening up a little bit. And I guess people want to know, how should they think about transacting again? What does that look like? And I thought maybe you could just share a little bit of your experience, like what's different this time versus what's similar this time for you.
Yeah, Matt. Well, there's that old proverb that says, never let a crisis go to waste. And it's really true. This is my 5th crisis of note. So the 87 crash, I was a very junior person on a trading desk, and everybody looked at each other, dropped the paper, didn't answer the phone, thought the end of the world was coming. There was the dot-com bubble, took place around 99. 9/11 was clearly a crisis that we had never prepared for. The global financial crisis, yet another one. And let me tell you that when you're in the middle of them, so the coronavirus right now is the 5th one, when you're in the middle of them, they look like you'll never be anywhere past them. And one thing I can tell everybody is, we will be past this one as we were past the other ones. And there are profound things that come out of those crises. 87, electronic trading as we now completely know it, and the efficiency around that and optimization came out of no one answered the phone. So we decided to enable computers. .com basically figured out how the internet had to be substantive as opposed to a bunch of investment hype. 9/11, well, we get through security lines much safer and pretty efficient these days. Global financial crisis, let me tell you that if we were facing this pandemic without the banks having gone through a deleveraging after the global financial crisis, we'd be in even worse trouble. Who knows what level of trouble, because they were really a deck of cards in terms of the leverage they were operating off of. But subsequent, the last 10 years, they've really sounded their capital structure up, which puts them in a better position to weather this crisis. So my main point there is this crisis too shall be managed. Luckily, humans are not artificial intelligence or RPA. We actually can think and evolve in ways we weren't programmed. So I think, what does the future look like, which is really what's important to me, is I don't have all the answers, but I do know we're going to find an immense amount of optimization and productivity in a future state because of what I'm seeing so far in operating a large sales organization from about 6:30 in the morning till about 7:30 at night, from the gauges and the phone and the video that is available to me the entire time. And that creates an immense amount of productivity, different stresses, but different environments. So I think that's one dimension. We're going to be selling in ways we haven't before. We're going to be welcomed. If you think about when I used to cold call in the 80s, now you can't even do that legally. Here's what's happening now is actually we're going to be able to digitally come into people's, not just offices, but their homes. And that's going to be part of our future state.
So Chris, when you think about productivity, so let's poke on that, because I've been fielding two types of questions from the folks that I serve. One is, how do I return to the productivity per head that I was getting pre-crisis? The second one is around operating leverage. I'll take lower productivity, but my cost of sale has now been reduced or could be reduced by 40, 50%. When you think about that question, do you have a way that you lean or you recommend folks to push themselves in the near term? And when I say near term, Chris, let's bound near term as balance of 20.
Okay. Look, I am going to maybe be a little out there, and I'm not in a state where you can smoke stuff, but here's what I would say to you. I would say to you that we're going to get better productivity. I've already seen evidence of that. And let's think a little differently about that cost of sale changing so much, because what you've got to do is pocket some of it, because we're not going to have people on planes as we have for at least most of this calendar year. But we need to spend that on other ways in which we engage people, build brand, get attention to us. We need to spend that on tools that will let the salespeople be more productive. I mean, it could be something as simple as, in these times, we're going to donate $100 for the opportunity to do a cold call with someone, and it's going to go to a good charity and everybody's going to win. That's a simple one. But right now people are feeling very philanthropic, and maybe they'll take a call that way, but that's moving my airplane budget to my philanthropy budget as an example. So there's a lot of other things like that. And people are running a lot of webinars. We're going to have to be concerned about being flooded with those. What's going to be the ones that really work? How are you engaging with people in maybe a survey that turns into data that they would like to get back, that you can make value for them? But we're going to have to spend some of this money that we're not spending on hotels and planes on ways that we engage prospects and existing customers on new innovation.
Okay, so then that's actually a really good segue for where I'd like to go next. So we're continuing to see people think about, how do I come out of this stronger? You have always been somebody, for as long as I've known you, that has been able to galvanize a large organization around themes. I saw you do it when we met a decade ago, and you were at a different place to where you are now. So I guess my question to you is, as you think about sort of acceleration themes, mobilizing people, can you share a little bit from your Broadridge view without revealing anything confidentially? And the reason I say this is Broadridge has been on an unbelievable run the last 5+ years, and has coincided with an incredible increase in market cap. So I mean, you've created a lot of shareholder value. You didn't want that to extract. So how are you going forward with that, Chris?
Yeah, man, there is a real need to look in the mirror right now and look at what you're good at, and think about what you're not so good at, and think about what's going to be needed to unlock the future state. And again, let's use this calendar year as that future state for right now. We have a very, very successful relationship orientated field sales organization. And we make a difference. And what we do, we believe, makes a difference in the lives of individual investors around the world. And that gives us a lot of purpose. And when you have that emotion and passion about what you do, when you're in front of another human being, you get the ability to exude that. It's a little harder when you're in a digital world.
Yep.
So one of the things that we're definitely doing as we do that look in the mirror is we're actually coming to you, SBI, to help us with how we amp up our digital selling. We have a very small direct telesales type function in the organization. I mean, as a percentage, and we know we need to change that. So we think SBI can help guide us down that path without losing the roots that's been so successful, because we now have to create relationship through digital. Now, the other element of that I would say is let's look at where that's very successful. I mean, the video game world is profoundly successful, and they're creating an experience there that has people feeling like they're in, virtual reality. And so we need to create that new reality as we bring out these things that we're passionate about that make a difference. I'll give you an example. We are the provider of governance. Corporate issuers that are out there issue securities, and the buyers of them are entitled to and required to get certain information, including their voting of officers and having an annual shareholder meeting. Well, you can't have an annual shareholder meeting when no one can gather in 50 states. We have a product called Virtual Shareholder Meeting, which we've had for a number of years. We had about 400 companies of the 4,000 or 5,000 public companies out there take us up on that last year. This year, we were the answer at the right time. We'll do probably between 1,500 and 2,000 of them this year. We had to mobilize. We actually took volunteers from other places and trained them on how to be able to facilitate these types of meetings. So we're going to look at what we're really good at, and we're going to try to figure out how we apply it in that virtual reality video game world. And SBI is going to help us with some of that as well.
Well, that's a good construct, and obviously, I appreciate the kind words, as does the team. So I guess my follow-up on this is, before COVID, you had always talked about, the importance of marketing, sales, client solutions, support, this sort of commercial supply chain. It's now being accelerated because of digital. So talk a little bit about how you're thinking about digital strategy internally, and then externally with your clients. If they can't keep pace with you, you see opportunities for them to maybe leapfrog instead of make incremental steps. How are you balancing the commercial term of come with me, Mr. Client, to is it still okay for me to sell and do commerce? So it's a big two-part question, Chris.
Yeah, so let me first start with a big message I'd like to get out to the CROs, the CMOs, and the CEOs of companies. There has never been a better time for those functions, particularly sales and marketing, to join and partner.
Yeah.
Arguably product as well, but let me just focus on there has never been a better time for sales leaders and marketing leaders to work together to serve the new agenda of their company. With that as a theme, I will turn to the question you're asking and talk about the digitized world. Yeah, we're going to have to balance the permission to engage with people in their homes, in their virtual environments. But if you do that well, the permission is really easy. People want to be involved, whether that was in the face-to-face selling world or in this world, with the things that they think are going to make their companies more successful, their lives better, their lives easier. And in the global financial crisis, people they were fearful and they were holding back, and you had to challenge their fearfulness to get them to think differently. And you had to bring a lot of insight to them and say, no, that's not right. Here's what's right. Here's my data. And that was the answer to the challenger world of the global financial crisis. This is a different world. This is, I'm going to provide you with a clear picture that's probably going to be using, digital solutions. They could be webinars as a form of that, but you can use digital video. You can use, a TikTok kind of a thing that gathers people and pulls them in, because there's still a robust economy. Let's remember, we've been in a robust economy. Global financial crisis, we weren't. We were in total fear. People still have a level of confidence right now, and they want to be informed. You just have to do it in different ways. So I think that the digital sections of marketing departments, the websites, the social media, the thought leadership, all of that's got to be taken to the next level. And some of that money that's being saved in travel and other cost of sale should be invested in these things, partnered by the CRO and the CMO.
Yeah, Chris, it's interesting. We have the go-to-market framework up as you and I are talking, and Melissa lays that out for our listeners and viewers to sort of structure themselves as you and I are having this discussion. One of the absolute things we are seeing, which we were seeing before, and been talking about it for a couple of years, but the marketing and sales budgets coming together to look at a return of invested capital the way that a private equity sponsor would look at doing a deal. That's never historically been the construct with marketing leaders historically. Some forward thinkers, yes, but historically it's been sales drives quota, marketing spends, and now there's much more blurred. And one of the things I'm seeing in the work that I personally do is marketing budgets should go up, need to go up, and actually need to be rethought because of their ability to drive revenue. But to your point, it's how you think about driving revenue. You gave 3 or 4 great examples on the fly of how you're reimagining Broadridge. So my final question for you is, if you think about maybe a gap in 08 or 09 when you came out of that crisis as a way for you to give advice to those listeners who maybe haven't been through what you've been through, what would you give advice to your younger self, Chris Perry, the leader back then?
Take risk as you're driving forward. We have an initiative called Win the Recovery. Believe that there will be a huge opportunity to go to clients and say, let's question how you did what you did. If you just go back to the way you did it before and go, oh, that was really hell, I'm so glad that's over with, and you just go back to doing these things that are essential, but they're not differentiated, you'll have, as a client, you'll have lost the opportunity to really put more energy and money behind what makes a difference in your customer base. And, to me, this is again where the marketer and the sales leader can come together, because historically you'd look like, okay, well, if I hire one more salesperson, I know I get 1.2 million in annual sales out of them. Bingo. Let me see how many of those I can fit in territories. Oh, and if I pour some money in the marketing budget, I may get a return. How many views do I get of this? Or it's not like that anymore. What's like that is, how do I make sure a marketplace knows they no longer want to be doing these services that are not differentiated? And actually, they had to lay awake at night worrying about never having planned for a facility that produces goods or produces in packages or whatever it does that I can't have people physically in. So why don't I leave that work to a company that is in the business of doing that and has 9 different BCP plans for what could happen, as opposed to we'll just transfer business to another location. Well, if that location has no people in it, then you didn't really have BCP. So This is a lesson learned, and I think we will learn lessons, but you got to be aggressive. You got to take risks coming out of that. Whoever gets out of the gate faster is going to win more of the future state business and convince clients to do things differently, as opposed to just go back to what they did before. And people will make change because you've told them that they need to.
Very good. All right. So Chris, as always, so good to see you, man. And it's great that you're kind enough to share your time with our viewers and our audience. So on behalf of the SBI team, really appreciate you sharing your insight, and continued success at Broadridge. You're doing a great job, my friend.
Matt, thanks so much. And I hope there were some nuggets in here for people to think about as they sit with their management teams. We will get past this, and there's going to be great opportunities, as there was after each of those crises I talked about before.
Yeah. So here's my recap for those that skipped all the way to the end and said what they talk about. Number 1, you got to have a mantra and a rallying cry. Chris talked about Win the Recovery and how you position and mobilize, galvanize your team as the leader. Number 2, marketing and sales no longer are separate. If ever there was a time, there is one. We spent some time talking about the commercial supply chain and how you bring them together. To 3, what Chris talked about, which is you have a chance to go and teach your client, teach them how to engage digitally, and be prepared to grab more share on the way out. So speed and risk are your friends. You should be hunting both of those things internally and externally. So until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.